What is going on, everybody? Danny Sports here. Haven't made a vid since before the Super Bowl. That Super Bowl started off like crap and turned out to be incredible. First video of the offseason where we have a tier maker list for NFL contenders before free agency, post-combine, pre-free agency. Let's get into it. So we got the tiers. We got the Chiefs. Can beat the Chiefs if everything goes right. Playoffs, trending backwards, young, and long shots. So starting with the Arizona Cardinals. This team I'm putting, I don't know to put in the playoffs category or the young. I'm going to put them in young. They got 2 first-round picks. They are a team that's on the up and up. I really like what they did to end the season a year ago, but their division is a gauntlet. You got Seattle, you've got San Francisco, and the LA Rams. It's going to be one of the toughest divisions in football next season, the NFC West. And I'm going to say young, as of right now, somewhere from 6 to 8 wins for Arizona, but they're definitely going to be improved from a year ago. Atlanta, right now, playoffs question mark. It's just because that division is terrible, and Baker Mayfield is not re-signed yet in Tampa. There's rumors about Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons because his wife's from there, and they're looking at schools and all of that. If they trade for like Justin Fields, they have to get a quarterback. If they run it back with Ritter and Heineke, they go from playoffs to long shots. But I'm confident with the new staff there, Raheem Morris, basically LA Rams East Coast, they're building out there in Atlanta. I feel like the Falcons are going to get a quarterback and win that garbage NFC South. I'm not going to put Baltimore in trending backwards. I'm going to put them in playoffs. They lost their defensive coordinator, the guy who played the chessboard on the field, with those studs that they have. Patrick Queen is also leaving, one of the best linebackers in the NFL. And we saw it with Philadelphia this year. Losing your coordinator is a huge loss. So Zach Orr, great linebacker in his day. Baltimore's one of the best organizations in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, they still got the offense. However, I feel like their defense next year will take a huge step backwards, go from number one of the best we've seen in the last decade, to top 10. And it's going to make a difference in some of these games. Also, Cincinnati, we'll get to them in a second. Buffalo, they're losing everybody. They cut Jordan Poyer. Micah Hyde is gone. They cut Tre'Davious White, but now they have Rasul Douglas, Taron Johnson. They're loaded at corner, Buffalo. They're going to draft a safety in the second round, probably. They're going to draft a receiver. Can beat the Chiefs as everything goes right. Here's the thing. They'll have a full offseason with Joe Brady. They'll win that division. Do you trust the Jets? I can't trust them. I can't trust New England yet. Miami, we'll get to them in a second. They're doing a bunch of cringe moves that I am not for. On to Carolina, similar to Arizona. I feel like they'll be better than people think. Their defense last year was not that good, but it also was pretty good, if that makes sense. And Dave Canellis revitalized Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. I'm confident he could do the same with Bryce Young. Carolina, similar category to Arizona. Also, the NFC being a lot weaker than the AFC, and the Panthers being in the worst division in the NFL at the making of this video. Realistically, for the Chicago Bears, I'm going to go with Young. At the making of this video, I feel like Kirk Cousins right now is going to go back to the Vikings. But it's similar to the Cardinals, loaded division. You got the Lions, everybody coming back, Green Bay, Minnesota, if Kirk Cousins comes back. If he doesn't, that goes from Young to playoffs if Kirk Cousins leaves and goes to the Falcons. But if we draft Caleb Williams and Kirk Cousins comes back to the Vikings, I think the Bears will end up last in the NFC North just because of how stacked the division is. Cincinnati Bengals. Hold on, I'm going to put a new tier in here. Got our own tier for the Cincinnati Bengals. The other quarterback that beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is retired. And that's Thomas Edward Patrick Brady. The only other one is Joseph Burrow, the only other quarterback who's beaten Patrick Mahomes in the postseason that have to give him their own tier. Cleveland Browns, first team and trending backwards. That defense got absolutely exposed. That defense got absolutely exposed in the postseason by Houston. They gave up 50 points to the Texans in that game. And Deshaun Watson coming back is going to make them a downgrade. They won a bunch of close games this season, and their division is absolutely loaded with Cincinnati, Joe Burrow coming back, with Baltimore, with Pittsburgh, who wins 9 games. They can have Helen Keller at quarterback and find a way to win 9 games. So Cleveland, for me, trending backwards. We got 2 in a row. We got the Dallas Cowboys right now trending backwards. All the drama, the family members saying Dak Prescott is just not him, and just all the circus going around Dallas. I do not trust this team this season. Also, the last year of Dak Prescott's contract. See how it affected Lamar Jackson. It's going to affect Dak Prescott. I do not trust the Cowboys at all. They're one of my teams in the NFC. I have them missing the playoffs at like 9-8. And yeah, just do not trust the Cowboys at all. Sorry, Denver. First team in the long shots category. At least the Cardinals, Bears, and Panthers have a future, and the Broncos have all that dead cap from the Russell Wilson disaster, and they don't have a top-flight pick to get a top-flight quarterback. Who knows? Brock Purdy filling the laps of the 49ers. But, yeah, it's a disaster in Denver. Absolute disaster. Like, their quarterback will either be like Mac Jones or J.J. McCarthy, and next season it's going to be very rough. The AFC West, you obviously have the Chiefs, and then you've got the Chargers now with Herbert and Harbaugh, and the Raiders with Antonio Pierce. They love him. That another stacked division. The AFC West is loaded outside of the Broncos, so long shot. Hear me out on this one. The Detroit Lions, in my opinion, at the making of this video, March 6, 2024, my pick for the Super Bowl out of the NFC is the Detroit Lions. I have the Lions making the Super Bowl. Ben Johnson coming back was enormous. It was like 99% confirmed he was going to be a head coach, and then he decides to come back to Detroit. That is nuclear news that he decided to stay in Detroit. They beat the Chiefs, but again, the regular season, weird stuff. But Detroit, they didn't collapse to San Francisco. Who knows how that Super Bowl goes? Their defense, I think they have already drafted really, really well in this era. I feel like they'll continue to do so with their secondary, healthy C.J. Gardner-Johnson next season, get another pass rusher with Hutch and James Houston. Detroit, future is bright in Motown. This hurts me to do, but I gotta be unbiased. If everything goes right, Green Bay, Jeff Heffley improves that defense to be like top 10 in the league, and all those young guys just figure it out. Green Bay can be extremely dangerous. Jordan Love at the end of the year was nuclear hot. They barely lost in the divisional round. They got 2 of the best teams in the NFC in the same division. It's going to be the Packers next season are going to be really, really good. And if everything goes right, they could take out Michael Jordan / Patrick Mahomes. Houston, the only concern I have is the youth. Similar to Green Bay. However, C.J. Stroud has got the poise of a 10-year vet, similar to Joe Burrow. He won a playoff game. He dominated Cleveland, and then they got their asses handed to them by Baltimore. But it was close in the first half until Baltimore's defense adjusted, and there was no contest in the second half. Houston, I feel like they need to build that roster up a little bit more. That roster's really good, one of the best rosters in the league. We'll see what they do in free agency and the draft. And, dude, it is right on the verge. Houston, for me, is right on the verge of only teams that can beat the Chiefs and can beat the Chiefs if everything goes right. Like, it's right on the verge. Indianapolis are going in the young category. And last season, they were an inch away, a yard away from making the playoffs. And what happened? Tyler Goodson, it was a bad play call by Steichen. I don't blame Goodson, and it's also a terrible throw by Minshew. That ball is behind Tyler Goodson, and I know Goodson got to make that grab. That's a tough catch It's impossible to make that catch. And again, I think Anthony Richardson will have some brain farts, and the Colts will have a tougher schedule next season, and I feel like they're going to drop in wins a little bit. So give me Young for Indianapolis. Jacksonville, hear me out on Jacksonville. It's either long shot or trending backwards, but because they have Trevor Lawrence trending backwards, if he can look anything like he did 2 years ago, they go up to can beat the Chiefs if everything goes right. But right now, the Jaguars, they're losing everybody. Their defense outside of Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker looks terrible, and Foye Oluokun looks really bad. Their offense, they're going to lose Calvin Ridley. They don't have the money to keep him. Christian Kirk's starting to get hurt a lot, and the Jaguars are just a disaster. And Trevor Lawrence doesn't look like that generational prospect we've seen or we heard coming out of college, and he was insane at Clemson. It made sense why he was this generational prospect. I hope he turns it around, but right now I don't trust Trevor Lawrence. So trending backwards for Jacksonville for me. Kansas City Chiefs, do we have to go into it? They get their own tier dominance right now. A couple questions in the free agency. Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed, two elite defenders in their prime. What's going to happen with both of them? We'll find that out in a couple of weeks. But as of right now, Chiefs have their own tier. They got Mahomes, you got Reed, you got Kelsey. Chiefs. LA Chargers. It's tough. I'm going to go playoffs. They have a lot of holes to fix. However, they got Jim Harbaugh. That was one of the bigger holes to fit. Now they got Justin Herbert with an elite coach, an elite offensive coach, and they have 1 million draft picks. Or they don't have 1 million. They have a top pick, and I feel like if Brock Bowers goes to the Chargers, my goodness, if you have a fantasy team, take him. If you have a chance to get him, get him. Brock Bowers, I feel like he's going to be a special player in the NFL, and Harbaugh knows how to win. I trust him. This is year one. I feel like they will make the playoffs next season, replace like Cleveland or Pittsburgh or a team we'll get to later. And yeah, the Chargers, we'll see what happens with them in a couple of weeks. But I love the Harbaugh hire, and we'll see how this goes. Los Angeles Rams can't beat the Chiefs if everything goes right. I have the Ravens way a couple tiers back because of how stacked their division is. The Rams in a weaker conference. And also just trust Sean McVay more than John Harbaugh. Harbaugh's a legendary coach, but Sean McVay is, in my opinion, just a little bit better of a coach than John Harbaugh. And, that offense is loaded. The defense, it sucks that Raheem Morris left. And their defense is, not great. But they have their first-round pick for the first time in an eternity. Since Jared Goff, that was their last first-round pick 8 years ago. Los Angeles, I like a little more than Baltimore heading into next year. At the moment, we'll see what happens in free agency. Las Vegas Raiders, young, similar to Chicago. And I love the roster that they're building the culture that they're building. And Antonio Pierce, keeping him was the best decision the Raiders have made since drafting freaking Khalil Mack, dude. I love what the Raiders did with keeping Pierce. It was questionable because Mark Davis, his history when it comes to just making decisions, football decisions, it's not great. Antonio Pierce keeping him is huge. The Raiders, young, stacked division, they can make some noise, but I think they're young. We'll see what happens this season. See what happens in free agency. Miami Dolphins trending backwards. They're going to lose Christian Wilkins. They cut Xavier Howard. They lost Vic Fangio. I feel like Miami next season will really disappoint. Only win 7-8 games, and Mike McDaniel might be on the hot seat to get fired. How a year changes in the NFL, not for long. I do not trust Miami heading into next season. Trending backwards. Minnesota, this is weird. This is the toughest team on this list. Either could be long shots if they lose Kirk Cousins, or it could be playoffs ? And right now, since I think that Kirk Cousins is staying in Minnesota, it's playoffs ? Their defensive personnel is not great. They're losing Daniil Hunter, which is huge. But that offense is absolutely insane with Cousins and Jefferson and Hockenson and Addison. And I think they're going to sign an elite running back. I think Tony Pollard will end up being a Minnesota Viking. And fits better in that system where the running back catches the ball more out of the backfield in Minnesota than compared to a Dallas. But right now, we'll see. This is a polarizing team because of Kirk Cousins. What's going to happen there? New England, we're going with Young. They have a pretty good defense. Their offense is abysmal. I know they're going to draft a quarterback. They're young. It's going to be a bumpy ride again, but they're not as murky of a future as the Denver Broncos. So give me Young for New England. Our second team in launch shot goes to the New Orleans Saints. They kept Dennis Allen. Their GM compared him to Bill Belichick and Tom Landry and Chuck Noll, which I cringed seeing that quote on Twitter. I cringed. And then they keep banging their heads against the brick wall. They're the Chicago Bulls of the NFL. If you watch basketball, the Chicago Bulls are just okay with just being average and no sense of direction. The New Orleans Saints are in the same exact position. Bunch of good players, just like Chicago, but, dude, no sense of direction, and it pisses me off. And then the easiest strength of schedule last year, and they didn't make the playoffs. I do not trust New Orleans at all. Launch shots. You're going to have to give me the same thing here at the New York Giants. They're not young. Their division is not great, but Daniel Jones is your quarterback. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I know hating on Daniel Jones. He won a playoff game, but like that year was Cinderella story, easy schedule for the Giants, all of that. Their defense, they lost their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, one of the only bright spots on that Giants team the last 2 years. They lose him. That's nuclear. He's now the DC at Michigan, University of Michigan. And Daniel Jones, that team last year was horrific with him as the quarterback, averaging like less than 10 points per game. And, man, it's just the Giants are cringe, man. Cringe with a capital C. Launch shots for me. New York Jets, because Rodgers is back, playoffs, question mark, same spot as the Chargers. If everything goes right, they can beat the Chiefs, but I think there's too many holes to fill for the Jets, similar to the Chargers, and they don't have a negative, and that's Robert Saleh. I believe he's that good of a head coach. However, they've won 7 games with Zach Wilson 2 straight years. Shows how good of a roster they have. And they get Rodgers at quarterback and some offensive line help. Who knows what they can do. Philadelphia Eagles can beat the Chiefs if everything goes right. Bringing in Vic Fangio, bringing in Kellen Moore, having cap space. Nuclear loss, losing Jason Kelce. That's nuclear, but I feel like that defense next year is going to be 100 times better with Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator. They have the talent. They're going to be really, really good on defense next year, Philadelphia. And I like them to win the NFC East and possibly compete for the NFC with Detroit, Green Bay, San Francisco, and the LA Rams in the NFC. Pittsburgh should get their own tier, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go playoffs for them, a solid 9 wins again, but completely averaged. Arthur Smith's their offensive coordinator. He's a great offensive coordinator with the Titans, so we'll see what happens. However, their division is absolutely loaded. Their conference is absolutely loaded. What's their ceiling? First-round exit again or wild card exit? Pittsburgh, the same thing over and over again. Similar to New Orleans, but a little bit better because they at least make the playoffs. So playoffs for Steelers. Hear me out on Seattle, okay? I have them in the playoffs. Hear me out. Mike McDonald thinks a damn good coach, and they cut Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams. They're a Patrick Queen team. They got Wagner, Hall of Famer, legend, but that Mike McDonald scheme, they run two middle linebackers, Mike and a Will, but like 2 middle linebackers. And Patrick Queen would be a perfect fit. He was phenomenal in Baltimore. I feel like he's going to get the Brinks truck from Seattle, either Seattle or Houston. I feel like Seattle, he's going to follow Mike McDonald. And Seattle, they still got Pete Carroll in the building, stability, and I feel like they're going to lose Tyler Lockett, but they have Jackson Smith and Jigba and DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker. Like their O-line will get better as well. I really like Seattle. Geno Smith's iffy, but like Seattle's a consistent good team, and they have a bright future. Just need a quarterback. I like Seattle's future more than Pittsburgh's and New Orleans's. The San Francisco 49ers can beat the Chiefs if everything goes right. They're bringing everybody back. They fired Steve Wilkes, but now they got Brandon Staley as an assistant defensive coach. Cringe with the capital C. He was a great DC with the Rams, but as a head coach with the Chargers, he was a meme because of how bad he was. San Francisco, I feel like will be good again, but at least double-digit wins, but not as dominant as a year ago. A Super Bowl hangover a little bit. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if they'll make the NFC Championship game. We'll see how the cards play out by wintertime. It can't be the Chiefs. Everything goes right. Tampa Bay, similar to Minnesota. I'm going to go playoffs, question mark. It just comes down to Baker Mayfield. If he comes back, cool. I don't think that team will make the playoffs again because Dave Canales is gone, which is a nuclear loss for Tampa Bay. As their offensive coordinator, their play caller. I feel like next year they're going to go down from 9 wins to like 6. I feel like, you know what? No, I'm changing it. I'm changing Tampa Bay to trending backwards just because of Dave Canales. The star play caller saw Seattle's offense take a step backwards with no Canales. However, he wasn't the play caller as Shane Waldron, but he did see a regression. I feel like we'll see a bigger regression in Tampa Bay, and even if Baker Mayfield comes back, they will. If he doesn't, they'll be in launch shots, but if he does, they'll be trending backwards for Tampa Bay. Tennessee Titans, young. They're building this thing from the ground up. Dumb mistake letting go of Vrabel. I get why they brought in Brian Callahan, but just a mistake firing Mike Vrabel. Big mistake. And they got money. There's going to be people that want to come to Nashville, and they have a top pick in the draft. If they get Joe Alt, home run, Bill Callahan's their offensive line coach. Another reason why I think Cleveland will regress. No Bill Callahan, their O-line will go backwards. Deshaun Watson will get destroyed back there. But anyway, Tennessee, next year it's going to be rough for them. Young, not launch shots, but because they have an actual little bit of a future compared to the Giants, Saints, and Broncos. And then finally we have the Washington Commies, similar to the Titans. I don't know about hiring Dan Quinn. I did not like that one. It should have been Ben Johnson, but it is what it is. And signing Zach Ertz, I don't know what they're doing. Not a fan. Not going to go launch shots because at least they'll have a franchise quarterback with the top 3 second pick that they have. Either Jaden Daniels, who knows, maybe Caleb Williams, or Drake May. One of those 3 is going to the nation's capital. And that's my tier list for post-combine. We'll make this post-free agency before the draft and see if anything has changed. Love you guys. Stay safe.